Russell, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you.
Welcome to Make Shit Happen podcast.
Glad to be here.
Make shit happen. I have to play that all the time.
Sounds good.
What's going on? How was your Christmas, man?
It was great. Spent a lot of time with the family. We do the Christmas Eve and then the Christmas Day evening. And then my wife and I, Christmas Day, were by ourselves. So we went and had brunch at Grand Duca Hotel.
Okay. Where is that? Grand Duke. Where is that?
Uptown Park.
Uptown Park.
Yeah.
How was that?
It was very good.
Very good.
A little pricey.
There was a lot of people?
Actually, they had a good crowd. It was a full house.
Okay.
Yeah, but the spread was incredible. It was a full brunch spread, and then everything from ham to lamb to turkey, roast turkey, and prime filet or tenderloin. It was excellent.
All right. Perfect. We still need to do brunch like we discussed last time.
Yes, we will.
Yeah.
We will.
And how's Gringos doing? How did y'all do over the holidays?
We did very well. We're noticing some challenges, execution challenges in the kitchen, where we keep offering these limited time offered items, and what's happening is it requires more food prep in the back for these single items that we serve, and we're noticing our ticket times going up a little bit as a result. So we're trying to fix that or solve that issue.
So tell me something about limited time offer. When you have a limited time offer on the menu, once that offer is gone and someone comes over there and say, hey, I saw this like 2 weeks ago. How does that work?
It depends. If we have the product in-house and we can still prepare it, we'll do it. But if it's a specialized ingredient that we didn't bring in because we're no longer offering it, then of course we wouldn't be able to. But, we don't like to say no. We like to say, we like always yes. If we can do it, we'll do it. Just give us an opportunity.
Russell, I want to tell, people who, some of my listeners who are listening or people who are viewing this on YouTube or any other media, social media, tell us a little bit. I introduced you that rags to riches. Someone who came from nothing, and you had said in a blog that I read, at one time you didn't have enough money to pay for your car note and you had to return the car.
Right.
And I want to know about that story a little bit.
Well, in my 20s, I was fortunate to grow up in a household where my dad, who was a dreamer, was able to build a brand called El Toro in the 60s. And I did work for him straight out of high school. But the 80s were very challenging for us. And so I didn't go to college, and I was trying to figure my way through this world. And one of the things my dad did back in the day was he produced his own corn tortillas for chips at the table. And so I saw the equipment as an opportunity to go out and peddle the product to other restaurants, which I did. And I ran into issues there because the equipment he had was very outdated, really. It was very old equipment from the 50s, and it wouldn't produce a consistent product. So that was one of the first lessons I learned, the importance of consistency. And that's kind of how our model, Gringos, is built around, part of it anyway, making sure our product is consistent no matter what we serve. And
then so tell us a little bit, take us to your story. How did you start Gringos?
Well, going back to the 80s again, we had a restaurant in Pearland called El Toro, and it was located at 2202 East Broadway. It was previously a steakhouse, and then the bank offered it to my father for, I believe it was $330,000, and they gave him $100,000 worth of working capital. So we remodeled the property. I was in my early 20s, and almost from day one, it just never did very well. I mean, the first month was the best month ever. And so he ended up closing it about 6 years later, leased it to a seafood restaurant, and then in the early 90s, he had a lease purchase on it. And when the earnest money came due, the Italian restaurant that was in there left after just 2 months. Mm-hmm. So we got the property back. And again, I'm running at the time the tortilla factory that I started in the 80s. And this building was empty, costing us $4,852.10 a month. And so I just felt that we had no choice but to go back in and try to make it work this time. And going in under those circumstances made me have a paradigm shift where it was no longer about making money. It was all about the product and the service and the value that we were going to offer. And as they say, the rest is history. But it's been an incredible journey. It's about visualizing where you want to go and looking at it like a puzzle. and you have all these pieces, and it was very important that over time I would put these pieces together. And had you told me almost 27 years ago, this coming January the 11th, that I would have a full-time CFO, a full-time general counsel, chief marketing officers, COO, and so on and so on. We have an incredible team that I've helped put together, and I couldn't have done any of it without them. But I'm just proud of the company we have today, and we're really looking forward to the future.
So it started 27 years ago, and it was like that old El Toro store, the restaurant. So yes. I mean, so tell me something. I mean, you looked at this building, and you're like, man, it was a steakhouse, it was seafood, it was El Toro. I mean, did you never doubt it? Like, is it gonna be good?
I was scared. I was honestly scared. But again, I went in because, again, we had no choice. I mean, we had this building with that payment, and my dad was not going to let it go. I mean, he just wasn't going to let it go back to the bank. So I went in, and I tried to use a lot of habits that I saw out in the field, out in other restaurants, what they would do. And one small example was, the Pappas organization. I'm very proud. I'm very impressed by how they operate, and I always told myself that if I had any choice of being anything like them, I had one or two choices: either go work for them or hire someone that worked for them. And about in '96, my second general manager was a former Papasito's general manager, so that helped take us to another, and that was another piece of the puzzle. So I would just, I always tell people, no matter what business you go into, find out who's doing the best of that, whatever it is, furniture, whatever, and mimic them, but always try to find that point of difference where you could be just a little bit better in a particular area. And one of ours, besides delivering a quality product, was also to make sure that we offered a great value. Seeing the price point that was being served at Pappas, for example, that gave us an opportunity. So, one of my habits is, doing more than paid for. Really trying to focus and offer a great value for what you're receiving. Now, a lot of consumers don't understand when it comes to restaurants anyway, is that they may enjoy a large serving of food. They may think that this particular brand, whatever it is, serves a lot of food, but no matter what they serve, they have to charge for it, and you're paying for it in the price point. So one of the things we've always tried to do is control our portions, really measure them out correctly, and make sure that it's something that the guest actually needs, wants, and can afford. Because you can serve too much. You can serve too little, but you can also definitely serve too much, and I think that hurts you.
And then the price point is a key.
Yes, it is a huge key in this economy where people's discretionary income is only so much. And they need to make those dollars stretch as far as they possibly can.
So where did you come up with the name Gringos? How did you come up with that name?
When I was selling tortillas in the 80s, one of my customers was a restaurant off North Main near the Dome called Dos Gringos. And there was a chain out of Dallas or Fort Worth, and they closed up early 90s. So when we were brainstorming names for the new restaurant, we couldn't name it Gringos because there'd already been one. So, I'm sorry, we couldn't name it El Toro because they'd already been El Toro. So that name, that restaurant that they closed, I said, let's just call it Gringos, and that's kind of how it got started.
That's how it came in. Yeah. And then how long before you said, what, Gringos is the name, and I'm going to trademark it and all that stuff?
Well, I wish we could trademark it. Actually, it's already been trademarked in another state.
Oh, Gringos.
Yeah. But there are several Gringos throughout the United States already, though. There was one in California that I saw, and I went and had dinner at. It was pretty good, but I believe they closed up. We're working on it. Our general counsel is keeping track of the name and the trademark and application dates and all that, the expiration dates. So we'll get it one day. You never know.
Okay. How important? So let's go back, and I'm going to take us back. So before, in the 90s, you said it'll be 27 years this next year. So 93 is when you opened up, I'm assuming, 93, right?
That's correct.
So if you opened up in 93, what were you doing before 93, and how was your financial situation before that?
Well, it was very limited. I was running the factory and the tortilla factory, El Matador Foods, which Gringos today buys from El Matador, and we're their number one account. We purchase approximately $2.5 million worth of tortillas from them a year. But at the time when I was running it, one of the issues I ran into was that a lot of the potential customers would not buy from me because our family also had Mexican restaurants, El Toro, and there's still 6 El Toros today. And so it was basically what I would call guilt by association. Just because my brothers ran the restaurants, they wouldn't buy from me, and it got old after a while. But I did sell to a lot of names that you would recognize. I did sell off and on to Papacitos, and I sold to Cassoulet, their flour tortillas at one time. Chili's, El Torito in the early 80s, I sold to them. But we didn't really, the El Matador didn't grow to a huge company at that time. It didn't really take off until about 99, 2000, when as Gringos started growing, it grew with it. So, but today it's a huge factory in Baytown. They have 2 buildings. My two younger brothers run it, and they have a corn plant and a flour plant. And they just recently brought in a brand spanking new flour tortilla line that will produce so many flour tortillas that it's incredible. They'll be shipping, or they've been shipping already, product to Jordan and some other countries, and of course they ship out of state, and they do private label. And it's a huge manufacturing plant. Very impressive to see.
Is there still challenge from other Mexican restaurants that don't want to buy from El Matador?
I think they've gotten past that. Yeah, they've gotten past that. And actually, a lot of them, because they like and they see the results of our business, they actually call El Matador and say, "Hey, we want whatever you sell in Gringos." But back in the day, in the early days, we only sold 2 corn tortillas, a yellow corn and a white corn, and people used them for everything. But
Russell, you've been in business now 27 years. I mean, before that, you were helping your father run the business or whatever. So I mean, you're a pretty seasoned entrepreneur now. Tell us, for people who are listening to this show, or watching the show, and they want to be in entrepreneurship, would you share some tips with young aspiring entrepreneurs? What would be some of your tips?
Well, one is, again, besides doing more than paid for, let's go to developing a high standard of excellence in everything you do. One prime example, and I try to use this every time I speak to students, or other business professionals. If you were to tell me that keeping a toilet clean would make you money, you would look at me and think I was crazy. But have you been to a Buc-ee's lately?
Yes.
Okay. Well, they built that whole model around clean restrooms.
Exactly.
And look at them today. And it's because, again, comparing them to the competition, I mean, they just rise way above the competition. I mean, at the end of the day, they're a convenience store that sells gas, and they sell more gas than I don't know how many other operators, but it's incredible what they've done just with that one simple philosophy of developing a high standard of excellence in everything they do. And we do that as well in our ingredients that we purchased. I incorporated a philosophy a few years back after a temporary setback with a restaurant we had opened and closed called Gringos Seafood Kitchen. But when we were developing the recipes for Jimmy Changas, and having this little failure behind me in the back of my mind, it forced me to have a paradigm shift again. And basically, it's a real simple one, but it's one that when it comes to deciding ingredients, speccing our ingredients for our recipes, if I won't eat the product myself, I don't want to serve it.
Don't want to serve it.
So that's kind of how I've approached things now. And anytime we make an ingredient change, it's usually always an upgrade, meaning we're paying more for it. But we also, a lot of operators, they purchase strictly on price. They say, look, give me the cheapest tomatoes, cheapest this, cheapest whatever. And what they don't understand is price doesn't determine your cost, it's your yield. And so it's important to understand that some ingredients will actually give you a much higher yield, which will give you a lower cost, if you will, than some of these cheaper ingredients where you may have paid a lot less for it, but at the end of the day, you didn't yield anything out. So what good was it? You actually, in some cases, paid twice as much as you should.
Yeah. So one tip is do more than
do more than pay for, and develop a high standard for excellence in everything you do.
Give us one more, if you don't mind.
Honor your word.
Honor your word.
Oh yeah,
that's a strong one.
Well,
tell us a little bit about that.
Well, for one, people don't realize how small the world has gotten because of social media, and how your reputation is the most important asset that you own. I mean, your word is everything. And when I purchased some real estate from a gentleman for my second Gringos in LaPorte in '96, he was an older gentleman from LaPorte, and businessman, and I made sure that I never mailed his payment for the on the land that he financed for me, owner financed. I delivered it to his office always 2 or 3 days before it was due, because I never wanted to give him that opportunity to say that Russell was late on a payment. And so I don't think people can really underestimate the value of your word, keeping your word. There was a kitchen that we donated, a full service commercial kitchen to a private school that we donated in the early 2000s. And the company that did the work for us sent over the proposal. And after I looked over it and everything looked fine, I called him up and I said, "Hey, do you want me to sign this and fax it back to you?" Back then we faxed still. And he said, "No, Russell, your word is good enough." And at that moment, I had a moment realizing it does matter to pay your bills on time, to do what you say you're going to do and be where you're going to be. And just being on time is so important. If people just, I like to be early, way early than I do ever being on time. I'd rather just be early and not have the pressure of having to run, last minute urgency. But that's a very important one. So yeah, honor your word. It will take you further than you realize, especially in today's world. When I borrow money from a bank, and I tell the bankers, I borrow it because my intention is to pay you back. A lot of people borrow money, and back in the back of their minds, they're looking at it like it'll be someone else's problem, but it's my problem. I signed it, and I'm going to pay for it. So even looking into the future, I don't incur debt to think that my son or my grandson will have to be obligated for it. It's me only.
So that's a very powerful advice especially for young, people who are trying to be entrepreneurs or young entrepreneurs, or someone who's aspiring to be in business. Honor your word, because a lot of people don't understand the importance of that. I always say that, when you meet somebody, act like you're going to meet them twice, because you always meet somebody twice. So it depends on the impression you leave them the first time. Right. Is exactly your perception the second time. So right. Honor your word. If you don't honor your word, you don't
have anything.
Yeah. So while you're talking about this, honor your word, tell me, you said that you have done this. You went to your the guy who financed it for you, the second real estate. You went and paid his payment in person. So, and then the integrity with the facts and what you shared with us. Tell us, why is integrity so important then?
Because it defines everything about you.
Okay.
It tells another person everything they need to know. Everything is based on trust. It's the most important aspect of business. The consumer, if they trust you, for example, to offer them a quality product and deliver it on time and a great value, they're trusting you, and they're going to come back to you. So, and then of course, everything y'all do outside of the business, the philanthropy, the giving is so important too. We do a lot of it, and I know y'all do a lot of it, and there's something very special about doing it. And so, I think it was Winston Churchill that said, we make a living by what we get and a life by what we give.
Exactly. And I love that quote, by the way.
Yeah, and it's so true, because there's something it's intangible in terms of what you receive from it. But let me tell you, it's very powerful. And good example, even just yesterday, one of our general managers, Jimmy Changas, posted a gift for me. And, I don't need anything. My wife and I, we don't give each other anything. I got her a card with some words, and so that meant more to her than anything I could buy. Because, in my life, I feel like I'm Christmas 365.
Yeah.
Really, every day I get up, I just enjoy life and I enjoy people. But my general manager and some of his coworkers, some of his staff, they got together on Christmas Day in the Jimmy Changas uniforms, and they went to a food kitchen and served. And that was my gift, to show me that they did that and that I had inspired them to do that. And that's to me, that's
awesome.
That's life right there.
So tell me, you said that you own this second piece of real estate. So do you own most of the time your restaurants? Do you rent them?
I try to own my dirt if I can.
You try to own your dirt.
Yeah. Not every circumstance allows for that. A good example, in our most recent Gringos in New Caney, we we had to do a land lease, but it was a prime location, so we're actually good with it. And it's our number 2 or 3 store in volume right now after 14 months. So we're proud of that. And so although we don't own the dirt, we'll make it up in our sales for sure. But the good thing about real estate, at some point you can leverage it up to expand, and that's the beauty of equity in your assets.
So you believe in owning your own dirt,
if possible.
if
Yes.
possible,
Yeah, if possible.
if possible. I like that idea.
And restaurants, and one reason too, restaurants they take a lot of wear and tear. They take a beating in our kitchens. Just the sheer amount of people that come through our restaurants on a weekly basis, anywhere from 8,000 to 12,000 guests per week per restaurant, and just that over time, the wear and tear that we have to keep repairing, and our repair and maintenance is probably higher than any restaurant out there, because we take care of our properties because we own them and we take pride in them. And if you're going to be around for any length of time in this business, in the restaurant business, you better keep your properties and facilities up to par.
Up to par. Well, tell me something. I've been to your restaurant several times. My wife loves going over there. Like I think I've told you that before. And I've seen, like, the grounds are always clean, and I mean, outside of the restaurant is clean. And for small entrepreneurs who are listening, or people who are listening, even managers or anybody, why is it so important to keep the grounds clean and the facilities just looking good?
Well, because someone else is doing it. We compete by comparison, and not just restaurants against restaurants, but restaurants against, or any business against another business.
Mm-hmm.
So if a patron that's walking in our establishment walks up to another business, it could be a bank, it could be a strip center or whatever, and they see their grounds immaculate, well, they're going to compare those grounds to ours and vice versa. So we're always being compared to in some way, shape, or form. So it's always important to make sure that your standard is as high as it can possibly be, because you don't get a second chance to make a first impression. And when people walk up and they see your facilities, especially the grounds, I say, and of course we do make mistakes, but we try to correct them anytime we do. But when you walk up and whether it's the grounds or the restrooms, you walk in a restroom of a restaurant and it's filthy, I can almost assure you the kitchen probably looks the same exact way.
I'm sure.
And so we try to keep our facility as pristine and clean as possible.
Yeah. Matter of fact, at my stores, we have a rule. That we have a lady who cleans the store during business hours,
Right.
all day. And my rule is, when you walk in, you clean the restroom.
Right.
Before you go to lunch, you clean the restroom. When you come back from lunch, clean the restroom. Before you take an afternoon break, clean the restroom. And make sure before you leave, you clean the restroom.
Right.
And the first couple of times, a lot of the people who clean, they don't understand that. And I'm like, if you slip away and the restroom is dirty, the customer, the patrons, when they're going to come in and they see the restroom is dirty, they're going to think the service you're going to give them is dirty. I mean, it's crazy how much restrooms have a psychological effect on the customer if they're going to buy or not buy.
Huge. Well, there was a book written back in the early 2000s called Inside the Magic Kingdom, talking about Disney World, Disneyland. And someone asked how many people work in their maintenance department or sanitation or maintenance department. And the number was basically the number of employees in the entire company. It's everyone's responsibility to keep the facilities pristine and clean.
Yeah. It's always everybody's responsibility to make sure that the place is clean. You got to take certain pride to be in the place.
I mean, I try never to walk past trash without picking it up.
Exactly.
Myself. So.